plan based on the information that has been provided over the last 3 meetings. So, we're going to go ahead and get started and outline the agenda, and then we're going to share the facts. What we've done is we've synthesized everything that the 5 groups did last meeting. You're welcome to challenge it. I've color-coded it. It shows logic. I think we've tried to make rash up. You can imagine what it's like to take 5 discrete groups and help them find common ground. And then honor and recognize the unique elements. So that's what we have attempted to do. So we wanted to refresh what are we doing with the long-range facility plan. And so we have lifted this description from the International Federation Facility Management Association, IFMA, International Facility Management Association. This is an international organization that establishes policies and practices for the management and planning of facilities. So I'm going to read this. It's not really long, but it's very to the point about what we're trying to do and how we've tried to facilitate the process, giving you the information. Strategic facility planning process can be defined as the process by which a facility management organization, a school district, envisions its future by linking its purpose to the overall strategy of overall organization. So aligning your vision, missions with the entire facility, all facilities. And then developing goals, objectives, and action plans that achieve organizations for future stakeholders. So, the next key element is, this is the national organization. They're suggesting that a strategic facility plan is a 2 to 5 year plan. State of Oregon is asking for you to look out further, 10 years. By state statutes, every community college is supposed to redo the master plan in 2 years. So you can see there is this consistency of create a plan, and things evolve. The economy evolves, populations evolve. It changes, but you have to, what they're asking you to do is just look beyond 5 years ago and 10 years. A strategic facility plan is a 2 to 5 year plan encompassing the entire portfolio of owned spaces that sets the strategic facility goals based on the organization's strategic objectives. You can boil it down to something as simple as a mission statement, but we went to another level. Remember, we talked about the population and population growth, educational adequacy, what historic buildings you have. It's escaping me. We looked at all those elements that go in the influence how the school is supposed to achieve its goals. Another kind of interesting fact that I always remember when I wanted to show graphically is look how spread out you are. I don't need to go into the history. Everybody knows how you ended up here. But your schools are spread out quite far apart, but you serve an entire population of class and surrounding. So, the agenda. We're going to follow up from our meeting November 5th what we did. Then I'm going to show you how I synthesize the work group information. And then we're going to try to reach a consensus for a majority opinion, kind of like the Supreme Court. And then we're going to review and analyze, and maybe even make modifications. What we really like to do tonight is kind of reach this consensus or supermajority on one idea with the promise that we can tweak that one idea, minor tweaks if we need to assemble again in January. So, just a quick review, I'll start at the top. We did talk about population, it's flat. Educational adequacy, there was an awful lot of discussion about how the portables are kind of distributed across the district that really serve as spaces for your special programs and some of those programs that didn't exist when the schools were originally built. English language high school, remember, there are all of your special needs kids. There's no space at the high school for those kids because, in part, because of accessibility, but also just physically there isn't space. There's also 2 to 4 programs that are taught off campus. Again, there's not enough space on the Dalles High School campus. Very small. So it's this educational adequacy that you're beginning to try, that we learned about by actually processing the comments about how these spaces really work. Same at Dry Hollow. At Dry Hollow, you have many of those same programs that were in portals, but you also had an enrollment issue. So there's about 3 to 4 classrooms at Dry Hollow. The rest of it is special programs. Generally, yes. Some of those portables were put at the elementary level 2 years ago when we went to full day kindergarten, because we had 2 half-day sessions.
You needed more space, so it wasn't really more students coming in so much as it was needing the space for full day.
Very much so. Your enrollment doubled at the kindergarten level essentially, because that was full day.
During the day, you increased the need for space as opposed to you still had the same number of kindergartners, but instead of going half day, they were there for the full day.
Yeah.
So you needed more space to accommodate that arrangement.
Yeah, to accommodate the full day, you essentially doubled the number of kids that you had
Classrooms
simultaneously
for kindergarten.
Ended up, the kindergarten classes didn't really end up in the modulars.
No, but you needed that space. So
yeah.
when he talks about the ancillary space that is there, the most recent modulars, that was the reason for that.
They got pushed in and out. You had to find space within the school, so that's where the portals. Some were assigned instructional space, others were assigned to some of those specialty programs.
Yes.
Colonel Wright, you have one, and it's a music room, and what's the other?
Title I, reading.
And reading. That's a space issue. There's no other place to locate portals. You can just look across the school district and kind of identify what type of spaces aren't being provided in traditional space.
And the only other comment I'd like to make is on the middle school. Remember that the middle school was built before the consolidation. It was built under District 12. And so when we consolidated, just within a very short time, we were at the capacity that it had been built for. It's not that, as you said earlier, our enrollment, in a way, fortunately, has remained fairly flat over the years, but the consolidation forced this building, which was new at that time, to be at capacity immediately.
Yes. We talked about which schools are historic other than the obvious. The Dalles High School is historic and significant, but so is Chenoweth by age. Although it's been modified so many times, it really hasn't retained much value. Even Dry Hollow exceeds 50 years old. So you can see you've got historic buildings across the district, but Chenoweth has been so modified. The state historic preservation or office doesn't really doesn't play into any kind of future modifications you might make there. Then we did the work group brainstorming. We had 5 groups, and as I said, I've published those 5. So we take down some, we add a little tape to them. We have photographs of those if you wish. So this is the basis of everything that we're going to talk about tonight. We'd like to show you how we synthesize this information. So any questions about where we're going to go? The next 2 sections, the synthesis and the reaching a consensus, we're going to do some voting. Any questions about where we're going?
So you're going to end up with 1?
Maybe.
Oh, okay. I thought that's what you were trying for.
I say maybe because we're taking 5. We're going to show you 3 options, it's really 2 options. It's a 1 and then a 2A and 2B that have slight variations. So, and they're so distinct that I think you can get a feel for what is the best direction that this group supports. We'd like to get to 1 and then make modifications to it. It's trying to take it from 5 to to 1, but we brought it down to 3 to kind of help along the process and maybe ending up with 1. If we have to get to a vote, we're set up to do that. That's why I say a consensus or a supermajority. I didn't use unanimous because everybody has different opinions about this. The goal is to get to 1.
And so, Richard, there's one other piece of information, and Randy, you can help me with this, but that has come in now that we're aware of that was not in the mix before, and that's a couple of years ago that the high school had a civil rights audit based on the Perkins, the career and technical
Perkins, right,
education dollars that come in.
Right.
And we never received anything back from the state. Well, now we have.
Yes.
And we are under a very tight timeline to respond to the state. And right now they've just said, well, everything has to be fixed by August of 2020. Well, it will be impossible to fix structurally some of the things that they're saying we have to fix at the high school in that amount of time. So we will be meeting with our facilities director. We will be working with the state to try to negotiate this, but I think people need to be aware of that there's some low-hanging fruit that we can do that's not going to be that expensive, but there are some things that they're asking us to do that structurally, I don't know how and I don't think anyone knows how we would do it in that particular building.
And there is that threat that if you're not in compliance, what could happen?
You will lose your federal funds and potentially your state funds.
And I did just hear about this. I was on campus at the high school on last week, and I got the passing commentary. And it is. I was not surprised in what I heard, the implications of it. It is a civil rights law. It's not a building code. Thank you. Let's see. Okay. I'm glad I color coded here. Otherwise, so what I have done is I started with number 1 and went to number 5. And it was just, it happened serendipitously to be a fairly logical progression. So here is Team 1's explanation. So we use a process where we determine what is similar, what is unique. We don't take anything out, we just analyze it. So what I'm showing you here is Team 1. Everything on Team 1's chart was unique because I didn't have anything against which I would compare it. So what we heard were the top educational adequacy elements in that group were supervision and safety, added capacity, and technology upgrades, and instructional aids. Those are all the unique elements to an overall plan. So I kicked those over to and compared it to the next one, Team 2. They had the commonality with Team 1 with supervision and safety, add capacity, technology upgrades. So far, we've got the first 2 teams agreeing on those 3 elements. Team 2 also mentioned instructional aids. Okay, that's the same as Team 1. What were the unique ideas that Team 2 had? Let's start with these down here. Support for programs, replace portables, relationships of spaces and learning environments, and I repeated support of programs inadvertently, but color coding. This lime green tells you that I found it on a supermajority on 4 of the teams. The dark green, all 5 teams made that comment. So if you follow the path, What I came up with is unanimously agreed upon items were safety and security, add capacity, and technology upgrades. All teams had to do. Let's put that in. We had a supermajority, which means 4 out of the 5 teams mentioned these elements. Improving the learning environment, improving the relationship to spaces, and improving instructional aids. So if you want to track it, I can show you exactly how all these added up and all communicated across, but you look at the dark green, and you look all the way across, consistent. All 5 teams had those. One team or another didn't include one of these 3, the learning environments, relationship to spaces, or instructional aids, but 4 did. So what I did is I said, at this threshold, that's a common ground that is kind of carried through them all 5. That's only 6 elements. And I believe we had 9. So I felt like that was a common thread and a common ground to any plan that we came up with. So I've used those as the basis for the repair of the spaces you have. Okay? But wait, what are the unique elements? That's where we come into this bottom level, and I've got those blue items, and I've got an orange item. These are unique. And so in this process, we identify those unique elements and determine, do they apply? And that's what this group gets to decide. So I'm going to show you 3 concepts. The commonalities, I have all of those in there. The variables are these unique items. So does that make sense so far? The only thing that I'm going to show you in all 3 of these concepts are unanimous and supermajority. The variables are the unique elements, and I came up with 3. Even they have some commonality between a couple teams. Real quickly, the blue talks about the Dalles High School. Remember, we didn't have an icon that said replace the school. The teams came up with replace a high school on their own. And in some form, every one of these teams, or teams 2, 3, and 5, all addressed replacing the high school. So we included that as a common element, or as a unique element in one of the concepts. One team suggested with replacement. We didn't have an icon for replacement, but they said that's really an important element. So that's another unique element that we could combine. So that's why I said we really have 3 ideas. 1, which is just fix and repair. And then 2A and 2B are some form of replacement. So we tried to simplify it to get it down to what is manageable for this group. And I think those are really kind of 3 distinct ideas that we track through this whole analysis. So are there questions about our logic or how we came up with this kind of baseline? We found this very interesting as to the unanimous and the supermajority, we believe, is a foundation of any idea going forward. The variables, the unique elements, that's what you can discuss as a group. So I'm going to show you how those all break down. That'd be okay at this point. It'll help kind of see how it works. Okay. This is really important, and let me tell you, it was a barrel of monkeys to put together. Okay. I can't help myself. If you know me for a while, you know I like to put names on things. I call this warm, safe, and dry. There's always warm, safe, and dry because you're just fixing what's broken. This one was very similar to Team 1. We took Team 1 and we only took the common threads. So, Team 1 had, and remember the colors, it's color coordinated, so green is repair. So they proposed to, in 2021, to repair Chenoweth and Colonel Wright. Getting back to the common threads, we said there are 6 elements that we're going to include in this initial draft. Supervision and safety, technology upgrades, instructional aids, relationship with spaces, and learning environments. Just to give you the variability of kind of the nuances to a plan, we pulled added capacity down below the line. It's still in there, but we want to break that out so you can look at add capacity. What that means is building new space, whether it's replacing the portables or adding space at the high school to provide space for the programs that are now off-site. None of these are plans per se. They're not architectural plans. They're organizational plans. We all know there isn't space on the high school, but we do know that you need to find space for those programs. Right now, the answer is put them at Wetumpka. That's a plan. Colonel Wright, same thing, same 5 plus add capacity. So that's what we see as a plan for phase 1 in 2021 to 2024. Repair Chenoweth and Colonel Wright, $10.86 million.
How much capacity?
Yeah, that's a great question. No extra capacity, only replacing the space.
Square footage? Modular?
No, they're actually sticks, bricks and mortar, but it's
Same square
equivalent,
footage.
equivalent to the modulars you have on campus.
But there's
Except-
floating numbers there that say add capacity, is that like on top of that?
Yes, if you wanted to investigate what, see, this number is 10.86. I didn't break it down there. I did
And
here.
below that says add capacity, that
Right.
means below.
So- Yes.
Right.
So, oh, there it is. Yes, I did. I did. So you could do 10.86 and add no capacity. Thank you. So we kept it broken down so that you can see it.
If you add a capacity, it'd be an extra 2 million somewhere
Right.
So that's incorporating what now is modular space into
into.
a bricks and mortar.
Right.
Okay.
And that's why I broke it out separately. So again, it's your choice. At the end, I show all 3 side by side, so. All right.
One more question.
Yes.
Add capacity, and so we're gonna add on to the buildings and then remove the modulars? We no longer
Yes.
need them?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
They replace the modulars. That's as deeply as we get.
okay.
So, yes. All right, so that's phase 1. Phase 2, following their plan is to repair Dry Hollow and the Dalles High School. Now, same 5 items, add capacity. Dalles High School has a big capacity add, 6.5 million. Again, that's trying to take in account, that would be to house those kids that are currently not on campus. And the reason we put it that way is because if you were to start over, you wouldn't replace square footage for square footage. The Dalles High School, if you just replaced it on a flat piece of ground, it would still be undersized. Your students in special needs and those specialty programs would still have to go off campus. So that's why we addressed it here. We said, this is how much more space you would need to accommodate the current enrollment in the current programs at the Dalles High School. Again, I kept them separate. You don't have to use those. You can keep those out. So what you can see is that, okay, that's on the next one. We have 2 numbers up here. The gray one is what today's dollars are. Since this will be in 2025, there is this escalation. So it's really a reflection of, in 2025, that 23.98 goes to 28.06. So it's just showing that the value of building it now as opposed to later. No editorial comment, they're just information that you need.
With the recent audit that Candy was talking about, though, the priorities would change?
Exact, could be, yes. Yes, accessibility is one of the elements that we had in there. Yes. And again, we're just talking organization. The execution is the next step. Okay, that's warm, safe, and dry. You see what it's just fixing up things and creating and replacing the modulars with buildings. There's the summary.
So about $45 million.
13 now.
Yeah, but I mean,
Right.
add it all up over
Yes.
both phases, about 45 million.
Yes. This is all based on ODE's numbers.
Students have to be displaced while you're doing it. No? Yes?
You can work around it, we do it all the time, it's done all the times. Again, we could figure out a way to get this, like you could use the modulars as you have them right now, and just move them into a place that you can, out of the way, and do the work. But it would be very difficult, but it still can be done. Great question. Again, that's the execution, how you actually do it. Okay? This is pretty straightforward. You take ODEs, yes, sir?
Too many questions. And this is not adding HVAC, this is just fixing things.
Great question. It is fixing the heating, ventilating that you currently have in place. So inherently, there would be some upgrade to it, but they don't give us a number for replacing with, there's not enough, I beg your pardon, I'd have to look at the detail. We may have talked about air conditioning, about adding air conditioning.
Into the system and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
you can do that.
Yes. But again, we're up here. A great question, Randy. If this is the plan, we drill down into that and figure, okay, this is what the state tells us, okay, here's how we can actually frame this. Okay. So, everybody understand warm, safe, and dry?
Does, just kind of going with Randy's thought, so if you're having to do logistical solutions to having school in and around basically construction, does your idea say that you're not moving anything off campus, or does it include that idea?
This is straight from ODE's assessment. It doesn't include any of that. It's not a how you're going to do it. It's what do you need to, what's the funding look like to do it. It leaves that whole piece out. Again, we're not saying that you approve one of these and you're ready to roll. We say you approve and modify one of these, then we look at how we're going to execute it. And I'm sure there are going to be some additional costs, but they're just looking at it in black and white, the numbers. It's kind of like the state wants you to identify historic buildings. They don't want you to do anything about them at this point because you don't know what you're going to do. They just want you to identify. So what I would say is if this is a plan that this group likes, then we would drill down. Don't take this and run out and create a bond campaign. We'd have to work through it. Just today we bid some Woodburn additions and renovations. Anybody familiar with their Nellie Mare Elementary School? It is an addition and a renovation, and kids will be hardly leaving campus. So we'll figure it out. Only the big schools like Portland Public Schools has the luxury of moving an entire population out of Madison High School and doing the work. I mean, that's the cleanest, but that's $160 million worth of work. You've asked a really legitimate question. We just haven't gotten it yet. Okay. Okay. I call this one repair, replace, then grow. The idea is take care of what you replace and repair what you have right now, and then do the growth later. But this was, there was one plan that really kind of had this, I forgot which one is exactly this, but the basic elements of that plan are to replace a high school now, and then take care of the additional, the capacity in a later phase. So this one, it did include Wetumpka, those same 5 elements. There was not an ad capacity at Wetonka because it is the community school, doesn't have an enrollment that's really pushing it out. It's the same Chenoweth, Colonel Wright, and Dry Hollow basic costs without their added capacity. So instead of itemizing those out again for you, and I ran out of space, that is just to repair those schools. Repair Chenoweth, repair Colonel Wright, repair Dry Hollow, no additional capacity. On the high school, we took the replacement value that ODE provided. We added that same capacity improvements that we talked about to provide those programs that are currently off campus. If you're going, so we're giving you the option, if you're going to replace the Dalles High School, you probably should plan to include those programs into the school to create a contemporary school, much like you did with the middle school. So that's why it doesn't match. That's the number. The 66 million is what came from ODE. The added capacity was the 6.5, which we had on the previous slide. So, in this first one, 72 million for replacement of the high school with the added square footage that is currently housing students off campus. And then repair Chenoweth, not adding any capacity, was 26.8 million.
That's 100 million.
The Wetonka site has scores low on earthquake resilience.
Right?
Does this address that?
No, it does not. The SRGP, the seismic reinforcement, is separate, not included in this, unfortunately. Okay, it does have a second phase. So what this does for you, it repairs all of your schools and replaces the high school. So everything's kind of fixed up and you got a new high school. It's delaying any kind of added capacity to a subsequent phase.
Richard?
Yes,
But I wouldn't fix Wetonka if I was going to rebuild the high school, right?
we're just.
Are you getting there?
No, we're not gonna make that, we put it there so you can make that decision.
Got it, okay.
But yes, your logic is there, it's like, okay, and why are you
I
gonna?
mean, we're not going to rebuild the high school in place.
No,
Likely.
so that means this number,
Drops to
Gets $10 million
16.
smaller.
Yeah,
it would
16.
reduce, yeah,
Okay.
at 10 million, look, yeah,
What's
at 10
another
million, so this
10
number
million?
down here becomes 16.
Okay.
Again, I was trying to be honest with what I put on the, I was trying to be, honor the
So
work. that was
about 88 million on the first phase. I'm keeping track of the
I
numbers
got it,
here.
I got it, I got it. So what's kind of interesting, you'll get it, it's not funny, but I got a chuckle at it. Phase 2 is very, very small.
Oh, what do we know?
3.9 million. But, you know, you're saving the inflation, so it inflates from 2.97 to 3.91. That's the only benefit. So in this plan, it is, that's why I called it
Then grow. So
then grow.
that's repair the elementaries, keep the modulars until a later date, and then replace them.
Right, they're doing fine.
Okay.
They're meeting the needs, but the schools themselves need to be repaired.
Okay, so now we're at 92 million
Yeah.
total between phase 1 and phase 2.
Uh-huh.
Right. Again, I'm going to show you
If the 66 million is right.
Yeah.
if the 66 million. The Woodburn schools that were bid today were $370 a square foot.
Yeah.
And that's low. We're thrilled. Am I right, Jose? 370 is a good number in the valley.
That's a good number to take right now.
Yeah. Expert timing for bidding.
What was that number again?
$370 a square foot.
Yeah,
The reason we bid it, now that's the other part too. We bid it now because this is the sweet spot in bidding. Contractors want to back up, they want to have their backlog for next year. It's not interfering with hunting, it's right here in the middle, between the holidays. They had a run-up before Thanksgiving, to be prepared, and we got good results. We're thrilled. It's under budget.
And the 370's got soft cost in it,
That is the contractor's price. That is not our cost.
hard cost.
Hard cost, right, thank you. All right. That was a humble break, I'm sorry. But we're ecstatic. All right, so I broke down the details here for you, going back so you can understand where we got the numbers. So I'm gonna bounce down here first. We're gonna come back up here. The high school replacement versus repair per ODE requirements. ODE gave us these numbers, that's where it came to the 66.21 million. That is a replacement cost for all three buildings, the cafeteria, auxiliary gym, gymnasium, and the main building. Just wanted to show you the math on that. That's ODE. All right. Phase one, 99.69 million. If you take Watonka out, that's about 10 million. The add capacity, as I said, a pretty small number in the future. Yes?
So the replacement costs include like engineering and architecture work?
No.
So how do you figure
Oh, I beg your
that?
pardon. I beg your pardon. Yes, they do. They do have, they're not, thank you, I forgot, because so many numbers are in. They do mark it up for those development costs. Yes, I forgot. But the 370 is hard cost. That's where the question. So they do mark it up, and you can see in the formula, if you look in the spreadsheet, it's down at the bottom, actually, it's about 40% down. Thank you. Okay, any more great questions?
Remind us how the FCI was calculated.
So the FCI is very, very simple. It's replacement cost compared to, repair cost to replacement. So this 24 million is 36.43% of 66.21. And they use this as an indicator of what should you do. Anything over a 3, a point, or anything over 30% tells you you've got some real issues and really need to get after it. It needs to be repaired very, very quickly. And that's just repair. You look like you got to follow up. I'm patient.
Yeah, no, I did follow up myself. Again, replacement doesn't enhance. That's right.
Right. All right. 2 strides, 2 big steps, and then replace and repair. Okay. This one gives you an orange band, which is Chenoweth. That team said, let's replace Chenoweth first, and then repair the other schools. Except they added capacity at, I beg your pardon. This is how we calculated the new construction for Chenoweth. It's the school that you have today, plus the square footage for those added capacity, which again, the enrollment is full. It's the programs. At Chenoweth, all the modulars are used for special programs. So, in creating a number to replace Chenoweth, that's where we came up with about $1 million to offset the portables. Colonel Wright is just repair. Dry Hollow is repaired. Here's Watonka. And then, I say optional. In this plan, they actually had repair of the Dalles. But I put it as an option and didn't include the numbers because I knew that in phase 2, they got replaced. So I just pulled that back and said, that's not part of the plan, but if you wanted it to be.
Replace Chenoweth means on the same site, no site work, right?
No, it is replace Chenoweth with the development costs.
In place.
Someplace.
Even though there might be site costs somewhere else.
Yes.
Okay.
For instance, I think you could come up with a plan to build Chenoweth to the south And after it's all said and done, take the old building down, and you now have a bigger front yard. There's ways. That's really the only point.
Okay.
But they were saying, replace Chenoweth. You could even do it in partial, you could do it in phases too. So for this one in phase one in 2021 to 2024, 22 million, and then 9 million for, that includes the,
Doesn't include the talk.
doesn't include the talk. Doesn't include the talk.
And it doesn't include any cost for taking Watauga down. Even though
That's phase two, though.
Yeah, those are actually pretty small costs outside of hazardous materials. If there's big hazmat, you got a problem there, but the demolition is a really small piece. The kicker on this one is phase two, because this is why I call it two strides. Chenoweth in phase one, high school in phase two.
Hey,
So the high school that we talked about before at 72 million, through escalation is at 88.57 million. Their plan called for adding capacity at Dry Hollow and Colonel Wright, because by this time Chenoweth is already appropriate size and the high school is an appropriate size. So those are the two remaining schools that need the attention. But again, it's a pretty small number relative to everything else, but it's 1.84. Today's cost is about 2.24. So we feel like these three variations are a reflection of what we've heard. And they're all pretty distinct. They're all pretty simple. They have the common thread that you're going to address the repairs at all the schools. Oh, this one did have some added capacity at, I missed one.
Not till phase two.
There was middle school. That had some added capacity. Yeah.
That's backwards slide.
Backwards. Okay, thank you. But very simplistically, it's just repair. What's that look like? What do you do with the high school? And then should you just replace Chenoweth? And so, questions about it. So here's the summary on the stride, two strides. 31 million in phase one immediately, and then closer to 90 in 2026 to 2029. And again, I gave you the analysis of how we came up with the replacement cost at 2109 plus the added capacity. So that's where we came up with 22. So here are the three side by side. The numbers are up here. You can look. You can see phase one, phase two. This one is right. I left off. Yeah, I left off the added capacity. Oh, I didn't escalate these. I didn't escalate them, just so you could compare dollars to dollars. Because the escalation's out. The color coding is intended to help. Blue is the high school doing their repairs.
The FCI on Chenoweth was only in the 20s, right?
26.
26, yeah, what's that? So actually go back one slide.
relatively, what, do you know or recall what the other elementaries SCI is?
They, let's see, Dry Hollow, no, I've got that.
But I think Colonel Wright is
It's
higher.
Yeah, that was the highest. But it's a historic building.
Yes.
None of that is accounted for in their spreadsheet. So if you're gonna replace window, I mean, it's a very historic, beautiful building, but it's pretty basic.
Okay.
So it looks like the cost difference between draft plan 2 and 3, is it 2 and 3? Is not very different, about 103.
Yeah,
versus
yeah,
92.
yeah, the total, yeah, because they're all the same elements, the
Right.
escalation.
So it's kind of a switch of Chenoweth, the Dalles High School,
Right.
which,
Right. And it's, when you get the inflation in there, it impacts it significantly. So, I mean, if you really wanted to, and I'm not advocating anything, but high school, or the bigger ticket earlier reduces the impact that inflation is gonna have on the plan.
well, one of my concerns is that the elementary schools, we have, with the exception of Colonel Wright, we have fairly level surfaces for kids with disabilities. But at the high school, there is not. There's not that ability to deal with our disabled population when they get to the high school level, and that's a disservice to them. So it seemed like the high school would be a logical replacement as
So-
quickly as we could.
So what I would like to do is, I would like for you just to share your thoughts. I'm going to record as many of them as possible. This is kind of that processing out loud. What we really would like to do is let's kind of have a discussion, and if we can reach through the discussion, we can reach some sort of consensus, then great. If necessary, we've got this chart with the votes, and I've got little stickers we can put on a plan, and then we can discuss it. Once we determine, it's almost like, can we go take some votes and then eliminate one, and then fine tune one. So what I wanted to start with is just having this dialogue or commentary, and I'll try to record as much of that as possible. Would that be all right? So the first comment was the accessibility issue at the high school.
And that might be a reason to be doing that now rather than later.
So this new information is new information. And something's going to have to be done. What you can negotiate with the state remains to be,
We don't know.
you don't know. I'm just going to call it now and future. Civil rights issue. State of Oregon issue. I guess I'm going to put issues and listed them. And then funding. Perkins. And the Perkins grants are focused on career tech education. Correct. Other comments? And again, please correct me if I haven't captured something to you that you believe is acceptable, just hold me up. We have to rephrase. Any other thoughts about what you've seen?
So if we delay repair or significantly reduce that of the other elementary schools, what is our, how long can we get away with that? Without the buildings just being totally not able to function? I mean, what kind of timeline do we have there?
So if I think I'm going to try to answer your question from what we learned. Educational adequacy was low at all elementary schools.
Right.
That's the learning environment, that's the capacity for core classes as well as the specialty classes. So, and part of the learning environment is heating, ventilating, air conditioning, windows, flooring. So the learning environment is pretty,
For lots of kids.
The FCI is a black and white number of, you can go in and fix what you got, but you're gonna get what you got. It's just gonna be fixed. So, I would suggest you can go on as long as this committee wants to, and I'm being sincere in that. Teachers are very adaptable. Teachers will teach with what they've got. But how could they do it better? How could they do it with better accommodations? How about the kids? How can they, there's a lot of research on how the physical environment impacts teaching and learning. So, I don't know that there's an answer. But, I'll run it up here. So how long can we go until what?
So we have to do that repair, replace at all three elements.
Okay, how long can we continue
To use the existing facilities the way they are.
with schools as they are now? There is one thing we know, that everything wears out. Everything has a useful life. You're still going to have, if your roofs are in good shape, eventually they're going to. If the flooring is okay and it's breaking down now, it's going to continue to do that. So the FCI is going to continue to rise. The learning environment is going to continue to decline, but how much we can't quantify that unless we come back in 2 to 5 years and do another facility assessment, which is fine. Actually, I think you should. Then you'd have an answer. Any other thoughts?
On Plan 3, I think the intent was
Thank you.
that Chenoweth vacates and gets built over at the old middle school location above the district office to allow for greater space of a new high school at the Wetumpka site with a consolidated athletic facility.
So that was a logistics answer.
That was a
plan as well.
logistical plan.
Right.
So I think that bears, so that's part of an execution plan.
Yep.
If that was one everybody wanted to do, then I would suggest we start looking into really how can you pull that off.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
that's important.
So Chenoweth relocated in the Dalles High School back to backfill. That's what I was going to write.
Yep.
Okay?
I'm trying to think how to put the costs in perspective, and one way to put it in perspective is in terms of, I'm going to look to Randy here, how much bonding capacity does the community have? How big a bond can we go for?
In terms of capacity, we got plenty of bonding capacity. We don't perhaps have a will. The debt service issue, it's about 3 cents a million. Okay, so that's 46 million. That is the draft plan one would be solid 30 something. On a tax basis, the 100 million is going to cost $3.
At what amount would it be, $3?
Yeah, it's about 3 cents. A typical bond repayment is about 3 cents a million
Okay.
to the repayment, the tax levy
Right.
for the annual payment. So $100 million is going to cost $3.
Thank you.
Per thousand, or,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Over how many years?
25.
$3 per thousand assessed.
What was the?
3 cents per million. 3 cents per million in terms of the annual property tax rate.
Okay,
So 3 cents, $100 million would cost you $3 a thousand for 25 years.
okay.
What was the last bond for? For,
The current middle school bond,
no, the one that failed? What were they proposing?
299.
299.
299, but it was phased in over.
50 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I ask about Plan 3? If we were to be able to use a vacant site to build a new Chenoweth, could the Phase 2 begin sooner than 2028? Because there's a huge gap in timing, and that just adds so much with that
Inflation,
increasing, yeah.
absolutely.
That's what I was getting at with my
Okay.
question.
Okay, okay, good, thank you.
Just move that up, schedule.
We go for a
3 cents a million.
Can we go for a longer bond period, or does it 25 years?
Yes, you can.
There are, you can go out, and you can also structure this debt differently.
Because that could lower it, but then for a longer term.
But you're deferring the interest.
So this would be a good illustration of how we could take one idea and modify it. So in the case of this one, you said, Richard, what would we do if we just squished it all together? And again, we figure out the logistics, I guarantee you. I promise you, you can figure out the logistics. But if we just push it together, what does that look like? We stagger them just a little bit, even if a year, it's the same, the inflation is reduced significantly. But that would be an idea. We like 3, but we want to move, we want to tweak it. And that's what we bring back to you the next time.
So the other piece that I would say is what the side conversation that's been going on right now in terms of if it were the high school first, you might want the length of time on that to be longer than 25 years, because otherwise you're already at $3 per thousand. So whatever the next phase is, that's going to be $3 per thousand plus, because you're going to want it in less than 25 years.
Right.
And whatever we do now could preclude any other replacements we might need to do in the future.
Right.
You know, so it's 25 years and the voters aren't planning to go for another bond on top of a bond.
So what I'm hearing is, it may be a 10-year plan, but you only got one phase. And that's fine,
But to Candy's point, you can, there are current interest bonds and deferred interest bonds. So
Correct.
you could structure the repayment on a bigger issue to have some capacity after 5
Yeah.
years to issue the rest of the bonds and not change the tax rate.
right.
You'd probably have to run it for 32 years or 34
So
years.
one rolls into the other.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing that I'm concerned about is the last bond that failed, it was $299 and everybody said that was too much.
I think,
And we're at
actually,
$3,
From working, I heard more people say it was too long. It was a
Too long
trust
a
issue
phase
that
of
was
use.
putting a plan, too much unknown out into the future, 50 years. And credit, what was unfortunate, the building was 20 years, but the repayment was 50 years, but people heard that 50 years. And that 50 years went too long.
True.
So the other thing that we had talked about before with that was to actually vote on each of those phases instead of doing it all at once.
Exactly.
So that would, you'd end up ultimately with correcting for any difference. So what I was saying is when we went for the bond the last time, what we could have done differently was to break it apart in terms of phases,
Yeah.
to still keep like a 5-year rolling, so phase 1, and then the next one would be within 5 years you'd be going clear that you'd be going for another bond, and that you'd get it done within the same amount of time. But
With
you
discrete
would request permission each time. And you would structure it so that you could try to, that you would manage the per thousand rate to try not to get that to go up too high.
But you'd have an election every time.
You'd have an election every time. So it'd be up to the voters to decide whether they want to, and if they didn't, then it would, drop off, or you could
But we're sort of going a different route. We're
Yeah.
not, we're talking,
This is
we're
10-year.
going into the financing
Yeah.
side of
Right, right.
things,
Yeah, I
not
was-
the plan.
But I think it's okay, you have to talk about it, you can't, so I think that,
It has
so
to be
the,
realistic to you, I mean.
To conclude on the financing plan, as I listen back to the electorate, if we would come back with them and say we're taking one bite at a time, that's our best, they would be supportive of that. And for this process, it would be good for us, let's say we're going to do one bite at a time and decide which bite we want to
Which bite
take.
first, yeah.
What we're not discussing is the, fixing what we got plan, the safe, warm, and dry. And I think it seems like an unvoiced consensus in here that as great as our ops and facilities people are, they've been, extending the life of buildings much longer than they were projected. And to their credit, that's not acceptable. We have to do some replacement here. And that's what the community said.
so this is a fix.
That's a fix, but it's
That's
not,
$50 million.
yeah. But we're not talking about that because we have buildings that need a lot more than that.
This would address, all those two combined would address the immediate repair needs of all of your schools. It wouldn't impact capacity, and they still be the same schools.
Speaking politically, again, the business community would be very upset with this because it would not have improved the attractiveness of our
Yeah.
town.
So I offer it, or we offered it as an illustration of if you did that, this is what it looks like. This is straight, there was one committee who went that way. Great, thank you very much. We think this is a good plan. We narrowed it down. We didn't include everything. We just included those elements of the highest priority, which were out of 9, you covered 6, so.
I think we need a hybrid solution.
Which is great. I love it. What does that hybrid look like?
Well, replacement and repair, it's just figuring out what the priorities are, I think, and the timing and the financing for it all.
So, and I'm not looking for an answer, but I'd say 3 is the hybrid. It's essentially, so what they did was, and I'm not advocating, just in looking at it, what I saw they did is they addressed all 6 of the items that were unanimous and the supermajority, but they tweaked it in that 2 of those were addressed by replacing the school. There was no repair to Chenoweth or the high school.
Put 3 back up again.
Absolutely. Thank you. Oops.
If we're gonna spend the money.
So there's one more piece of information,
Yes, sir.
and that is that in that idea, that Chenoweth Elementary would be built on another site,
Mhm.
which we own the property. So, but that property, almost, 98% of it is in scenic area. So,
Actually, I think there's 100% in now. Yeah.
did they redo it?
They redrew it.
Okay, so all of it is in the scenic area. So that presents a problem in that we're keeping a facility operating there in order to use our grandfather status of being able to rebuild a school there.
Mhm.
If we let that whole arrangement go and delay it or not use it
Right.
for a long period of time, we're going to run into the problem of losing the ability to do anything at all with that land. So we lose the value of it, which is significant for a school district.
So you're talking about again, make sure I got the right properties.
It's the old
Middle school, okay. So there are more than just the scenic area problems with the middle school side.
Yes. The
Can't
other
get
part-
buses into it. I mean,
There's
it's-
site problems.
There's
with it.
site problems,
Right.
lots of site problems. Just here one.
Right, and getting rid of what's there. But that's another community value.
Right.
That building is a source-looking site, and everybody knows that, and would like to see something done there. So, I mean, that's part of community value also.
I guess the question is too, can we rework the site to make it workable?
Right, which we
And
could.
it was Chenoweth Middle School, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. So what I'm writing is the use of Chenoweth Middle School site should be addressed.
Mhm.
And again, I'm trying to stay pretty broad. And again, we're getting a little bit off of execution, but it's a really important element to discussion about the execution when it comes. We can't ignore it now.
It's a play.
So, I can't help it, I'm an architect. I did look at it before, looked at it. Okay, what could it be used? There's so many problems with the slope and the access and the size. I'm not sure, and now it's in the scenic area, it would be good time spent actually looking at, see what could be done. If it's put in an elementary school, let's talk about it. Let's look at it. We didn't look at it putting an elementary school in. Remember, we talked about doing the high school with the district office, and I can tell you, just the slopes are murderous.
That was on the administration side.
Right. And the high
It's
school, the
even
middle
worse
school
than-
isn't much better, again,
Yeah, right.
so I think it would be worth just another look to see if it could be done with the middle school, but I think we're gonna run into the same problem. But if it would be, let's do a little due diligence on that before we even start talking about that as an option. But the scenic area does bother, concerns me, and the slope concerns me. And removing the building, that's not a huge issue.
$1 million. Whatever.
Yes,
Do you have that percent difference there, like 26% of that replacement cost is what it costs to repair it, right?
right.
Remind us, you had mentioned what percentage you consider like a threshold where it's not worth spending the money on repairing.
Well, and that's not exactly it, but in the standards of IFMA, it's once you've got 30%, you need to think about serious improvements. And you're close, so, yeah, if somebody from the hospital, we've had hospital representatives, they would never let their buildings get beyond like a .1.
Rich, I say this as a parent with 3 kids at Colonel Wright, and I badly want to see new facilities and repairs and replacements. There's schools of thought that say if you want to attract new people to your community, new businesses, new entrepreneurs, that a high school would be where you put your money, because people recognize that this is a community that is interested in getting my kid ready for college, ready for careers, interested in the newest technologies coming out. So, I mean, I say that with apprehension, but when you're talking about where to start, I guess which kind of speaks to, what happens with taxes and levies and things in the future with more people here in the community to pull into that. But it's not the lowest hanging fruit, obviously, but that's kind of your long game plan would be, this is a community picture. We need to start talking about high school more, because we're going to understand as a community that we're trying to get our kids ready for the future.
Which was our conclusion the last go-around. Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why that was the plan we proposed. That part of that plan was, let's do the
Let's
high
start with
school.
the high
Let's start with the high school. It's our biggest investment.
Hmm.
It'll have the most bang for the buck.
Mhm.
And it will serve the community in the way you're speaking of.
Yeah.
So, following in that direction, starting with the high school, as I'm thinking back to the conceptual design drawings that we had in the last round, looking, even before that. We're going into the bond, a layout of the high school on the Chenoweth property. And I'm imagining in my mind that one could squeeze a new constructed high school, leaving the Chenoweth school building in place.
Yes.
It would be crowded. And in doing that, what this would kind of, so we could spend 72 million, replace the Dalles High School on the current Watonka High School spot, leaving Chenoweth for a phase, moving Chenoweth Elementary for a phase 2. It does run the risk of losing the middle school property, but that's also, at risk already. So that would get us into a new high school, saving escalation costs.
If we were going to replace Chenoweth first, would Chenoweth, the new Chenoweth, absorb any of Colonel Wright? Any of the student body within that? Is there any benefit in absorbing Colonel Wright's, students?
Sir, Robbie, where I see the value is exactly what you can adjust your student population in a new school on a flat side.
Yeah.
Chenoweth is overcrowded because it is, I mean, anybody off the top of their head know how many acres? It's like 2. So yes, you could do that, but then you get into the whole issue of boundaries and it becomes challenging.
Okay.
These are really good thoughts. And I didn't exactly say what you said, but I hope I captured it. How do schools attract new citizens to community? It's kind of a rhetorical
Not so
question.
much a statement, it's more of a rhetorical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Richard, another question, are sports facilities included in these costs?
Not specifically. And again, this is ODE. They're trying to have you create a big picture. The economy is softening a little bit. I don't know what you're seeing, Jose, but we're definitely seeing a little bit of softening as evidenced today, but we saw it before then. Not much, but it certainly beats the heck out of what we were experiencing about a year ago. So we could do a vote. We have time. We could do a vote and then discuss the outcome. We could talk, we could reach that point and then you could tell us, hey, we want you to look at this, we want you to look at this, and look at this. Can you bring it back? Is it that, Cindy, is it the 8th? I forgot what the date was. Of the next meeting.
14th. It's January 14th.
Thank you.
14th.
We could bring it back and then have that discussion. What I'm trying to do is kind of narrow the scope so that we can, and I've heard a narrow the scope, but it's not my process. But we would be happy to look at the implications of that plan. I think regardless of which one it was, we would be happy to look at the implications at a very cursory level, do some investigation. So do you want to continue talking about, would you like to just take a vote and see where you are?
Question first.
Yes.
So this is the sort of recommended, somewhat shorter plan. It's only 5 years long or something.
No, I don't really have one.
So if we repair in the second phase, that we're implying that none of the other elementaries will get replaced in our 10-year horizon.
So let me see, if you're saying, if we go back to this one and use, and instead of repairing Chenoweth, there's a replacement in there somewhere.
But, well, or 3, because in 3, we've replaced Chenoweth, replaced the high school.
Right.
Repaired and added some capacity to the other 2 elementaries, but there's no replacement of the other 2 elementaries.
Correct.
Anywhere.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yes, thank you.
We're
And I
pushing
think-
that out.
And I think now that Jose described what their team was looking at, they were relocating Chenoweth so that there was more space for the high school.
Yep.
And then that's, I mean, that's a real approach. I mean, back to your question, Bob, you know, we could put 3 additions of the remaining elementary schools, that might work. The 2 elementary schools.
Yeah.
That might work.
Randy, going back to what the last group arrived at with the bond that failed. We started with, I'm just looking at time frame. We started with the high school, then what was going to be next and how soon?
Well, I don't know that we ever landed solidly anywhere, but I think some of the conventional thinking was to build a new Chenoweth at the middle school site, and then we could stage kids in the vacated Chenoweth every 5 years until we're replacing the other elementary schools. So I don't know that the order was hard and fast anywhere.
Okay.
It was just like high school, and then every 5 years there was like $30 million worth of capacity to build an elementary school.
So if I were to have some input into this, in terms of just thought process, would be to go back and revisit what that entire group came up with for that, but then the work that would need to be done after this first piece is all of the kinds of questions that didn't get answered in the community, like, for example, what happens to the high school when we vacate? And then the other thing is giving people an opportunity to vote on each time, but actually to look at the accelerated process so that you're not putting overtime, lots and lots of bond money into repairing, because you're going to be pushing it out further than 50 years is what I'm saying. And you're going to be paying more money to try to keep things in place that are past their useful life.
Well, too, Katie, I think one of the considerations was there wasn't any effort to do anything with the high school because it was going to be perhaps a place to stage students if Chenoweth moved outside.
But that kind of work needs to be done because that was a criticism, and I think we need to pay attention to that. And if we're going to say, well, it's going to be, staged for however many years, and then it's going to be sold, or it's going to be turned into a, early learning center, or whatever. I mean, I think we need to be more specific when the next group moves to the bonding phase. But just in looking at those costs up there and looking at stretching that out over time, you're not getting anywhere. I mean, you're spinning your wheels and putting millions of dollars into facilities that are past their capacity.
Mhm.
So it's like, or past their useful life. And all that time, you're risking this district's contingency plan each and every year, for something that could go wrong. Like this fall, when we had the fire alarm system go down at the high school, and we had people on fire watch. That isn't the only school that could happen at. And while it seems small in the big picture of the millions of dollars, when you're talking about a $300,000 replacement for one system that's obsolete in one building, you're talking about a real risk to this community for what could be happening to these schools in the next 10, 15 years if we aren't a little bolder in what we're saying.
Yeah, and I appreciate what Phil said too, and that the criticism was, and we heard it as well, that, rather than an all-encompassing plan, it would be discrete elections every 5 years or whatever. The risk is once you start down that road and structure the debt repayment in a certain manner, expecting one to happen every 5 years, and if you get a hiccup, taxes are going to fall.
Yes.
Until you pass another bond.
But I think that's, the community's wanting that ability, so,
So, and again, I fully think it's important to discuss this. That's the reality side to it. But I know what the state wants from you. It's just tell us what a plan looks like. And how you execute it is essential to this community. But I could honestly say, if you share the community what your vision is for right now, and you're gonna work on the plan, then that's the next step in the process, is figuring out how the execution of that great idea. And I know that's not an easy out, because they're gonna ask the same questions.
Well, I think it boils down to, and I'm fairly new to the community, so I'm still learning, but, you know, we have to face the cold, hard facts of what is our facility need, replacement need, is that even fundable within this community? That's really the question we're wrangling with, and yeah, it could be tiered and structured and all that kind of stuff, but we already got shot down once, and, you know, I will say, go on record saying, I did not vote for the bond. I've always voted for bonds and everywhere I've lived, but when my taxes were going up almost $1,500 a year, I can afford it, but we have a very distressed population here in town. And when I look at, you know, how that might be spread out and how landlords are gonna pass that on to renters, that would put a lot of people out on the street, so we have to keep that in mind too.
So let me see if I can clarify. We might be trying to, I think you're trying to steer us toward two different audiences. One is the state, answer the question for the state, and the other is the question we want to do is, yeah, how are we going to make this happen in our community? And those can be at different levels of
They're
precision.
different, yeah, exactly. Execute a plan as opposed to execution.
So for the state, would be happy if we say in broad, some very broad strokes.
Right.
And then we know we want something a bit more, and that something more definite to give to our community is going to take more time.
And our community wants it, I mean, they
So
have
we could,
expressed.
so I'm proposing, let's try and answer the state's question first at their level of demand.
And again, and I'm not, I would like to see if we wanted the same, but that's pie in the sky. It could be potentially pie in the sky. The state wants you to have a plan. They want you to go through this process. And they want you to know the facts. And so I think that's really important. You know so much more about where you fit. This process brought you so much more information than you had before. The fact is, you come up with a very similar ideas and the same concerns. That's not surprising that you have so much more information. So the goal of submitting to the state and having them sign off on it is so that you qualify for the awesome grant. They won't qualify, it's 4 million or 6.
Like for us.
You can't even have the 4 million until you submit the plan. And one last thing. I'm not advocating that you could submit something that's in fact submitted.
I think the community, I mean, they're gonna hear about what we've decided, and they're gonna hold us to it, so I feel very much, you know, I feel a big responsibility here.
And yes.
Richard, do you have the information with you of the ranking of the FCI?
Statewide?
No, of our buildings.
I've asked that question.
No, the high school was 36 point something and Chenoweth was, or 34 point something and Chenoweth was 24.
I think they're just prioritizing
I do have-
buildings.
Well, I think there's maybe two things. If the high school is, and it has a relatively high facility cost index, and that politically is the thing to do. But I think we certainly ought to weigh the FCI on the other buildings to see in what order they need to be dealt with.
Well, it was, the high school in Colonel Wright was the next, I mean,
I'm sure.
those were very
Very close. They were close
close.
to 34, as I recall.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
I mean, if you want to start with the high school, but in terms of a plan that you're going to turn in that's your goal on replacement, it seems to
We
me
need to
that you
triage
should
them.
rank them by need.
Yeah, triage.
There's logistic problems with doing that.
Well, there's logistic because, you know, the Colonel Wright versus the
Correct.
Chenoweth, depending on how you structure things, but you
But
could
you have
say,
a plan doesn't mean you got to follow it.
well, so
We didn't hear.
So my memory of it, and I don't have
Lots
the-
of plans.
What's that Tyson quote? Everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth or whatever.
That's what it appears to be on.
So my memory of it was that it was the high school and Colonel Wright, which were very, very close.
Yes.
And then Chenoweth, and then Dry Hollow.
Okay.
And I know we had a little bit of issue with some of the scores for Dry Hollow in that first presentation or whatever, but even with that correction, I believe that it still comes in that order.
All right, so education.
Well, intuitively, I agree. I think that's what it is or was. Because I know, no, I believe Colonel Wright was in the 30s.
Yeah, that in a high school, we're in pretty rural.
It's a lot of concrete. Hard to change.
It's hard to change. It's hard to change.
So I'm hearing our conversation drifting toward high school first, but then and it's somewhat different from the three drafts.
Well, I think it's actually draft plan 2, that high school out of the gate with some repairs,
Yeah.
and then an elementary replacement with more repairs.
And
Yeah.
where I see the difference from us is instead of replace and repair the elementaries, rebuild. Yeah, that is replace. And here it's coming back to desiring replacement of elementaries.
All right, so I do have, I want to make sure, this was the older chart, so we're going to adjust that. Yeah. We had 12 in here. So, the lowest score was the high school. And, right.
You had it on a slide because we took it to the city council.
And
So again, going back to what we, Don, some of the things that you were talking about in terms of we may have to phase this in over a longer period of time, then I don't think it's unrealistic to leave some like phase 2 repair kinds of things. Start with the high school and then because if a bond does fail, we're still going to need to keep things together.
Yeah.
So you could come up, after this phase, you can come up with those ideas and plans, but we should have a failed, if we have a bond failure after the first one is passed, then we need to have a backup plan for keeping things working. Right?
Yeah, squeaking by.
I'm laughing because I think the state wants a plan, but we want a realistic plan.
We want a realistic, I guess that's that's my problem. I don't want to put something in there that's not realistic.
No, I was talking about,
so Colonel Wright was the 1.3.
He was referring to the FCI numbers,
And these
Oh,
not the
are,
adequacy.
Yeah, not the adequacy, right?
you got a slide in the PowerPoint deck because we took it to the city
Yeah,
council.
and I-
You got a summary somewhere.
Yeah, let's see.
I
Maybe
agree with Candy.
Thank you.
If we are looking at ultimately replacing all the schools, do we have space to consolidate elementary students into one larger, like 2 instead of 3 schools, like Robbie had mentioned?
You need to build one that has the capacity to,
Is that even-
so if you were looking at trying to absorb all of Colonel Wright into another school, that's a larger elementary than what is, it is, yeah, really, yeah, because it would be, what is it? You've
Well, we got almost
300
1,400 elementary kids.
330, so that would be.
Yeah, they're too
330
big, it's
plus
not.
50, so that'd be about 600 kids in each
It's
of the
too,
elementary
it's
schools.
too big.
Well, no, but if they're talking about one of them being a mega, you'd be talking about 700 plus kiddos in an elementary school, and that's,
Which
it's
happens,
just
but it's
not.
insanity.
Well, obviously, you would have additional administration, vice principals, I mean, you'd have to have some very different. But it's a pretty big,
You could make it, you could actually
could
break
do
the
it.
site
You
up
could do
into a
it.
primary, elementary, and
Yeah, but I don't know that you choose.
yeah, I don't know that you would choose to do that, but you could do that.
And I can't think of a place.
And there are
So
some
that's,
places.
that's what I was trying to think of, was where would be a place where you would locate that, because you're, logistically getting your
Find
recesses
it?
done and all of that sort of thing with that many kiddos on it.
I don't have that presentation.
Oh, lunchtime.
Prior to it, which was just.
Yeah, you have to have a
individuals.
pretty big,
So Chenoweth was about, it was 2.6,
26 point something.
26. Colonel Wright is higher. It's closer to 31. And then I've got 3 buildings. I'm trying to average those based on square footage. Dry Hollow, 28. 1.9 for the high school, or for this school. And then 32 for the high school, 37 for Watonka. Yeah, and so those are critical. I'm going to keep
So
it.
it's the order you described.
That was the first meeting. The second meeting, we had that summary and I put it on a slide and had it on a thumb drive. Didn't save it to my hard drive.
I keep thinking of the comment that Kurt made in one of the first meetings, was that when he arrived at the high school, he was absolutely appalled by the facilities, and then as he lived it for so many years, it's kind of something he's really, really used to, and he says that's appalling to him, that it's something he's grown used to and he can live with, and that kind of thing.
Everybody deserves better than that.
So, I'm sorry I don't have this combined. We do have, yeah, I don't have it.
That's good enough.
We're at 2.6 on Chenoweth and 36.43 on the high school. And the high school was the highest.
so we really are going back to some version of Plan 2.
Yeah.
And I think we can get finished up with it, really. I mean, unless there's new ideas for,
So a 15-year plan would be.
yeah,
high
15
school
years.
and then every.
We would know in our
every
minds what
5
it was,
years.
yeah.
Do high school now,
Yeah,
5 years from now, 5 years, 15 years.
15, yeah.
So the Watonka is 10 million on here. What is Watonka? Yeah, that number, I mean, you can still put it on there, it just pushes down to the end of the priorities.
Yeah.
Or if the high school is built on site, it goes away.
It goes away.
It goes away.
Yeah, so so this number, all right, let's make sure, it was Plan 2 we were talking about, that.
Yeah,
Plan
yes.
That's good.
Because with that, likely, Watonka would go away and, but the high school would still, as it is, would still be being used, but for much smaller population. than
what would still be
high school.
used?
Oh, yeah, it would be.
No, what would?
Well,
The
because
high
you've got, if you
school.
take Watonka
Yeah.
away,
Okay.
you still have some programs that are not, yes, you've got, the high needs students would go to the high school, the new high school. but you've got some other programs there, and then potentially you need that high school for the very next time you do, like if you do an elementary, you're gonna need someplace
You use flex space.
for kids,
For the
yeah.
if you
Yeah.
built a brand new high school, you'd probably account for that.
No, that's what I said, you would, yes, but you've got other things there that,
Yes.
Like
Can't just-
alternative and
yeah.
Head Start and things like that.
and there are other things that, the community might want to think about during that time in terms of maybe they decide to sell where the current administration is, because they want to, put some money towards the bond or whatever to offset. And if they do that, then the high school would be, at one time it was the superintendent's district office, yeah.
Or
So,
a district
there are things
office
like that.
could be made as part of the high school construction.
Correct.
It could be,
well, it could, no, as far as the current old high school, it could, it could easily serve as those kinds of spaces. And so it could free up land to be sold for the purpose of offsetting capital needs.
so you like sell the district administration.
Correct.
We should really
You could.
only be looking at phase one, and phase two
Yeah.
could be something different,
Right.
right?
So in
It's always
this-
88 million.
Without Watonka, it would be 89 million.
89 million is what tax rate then? That's
$2.70.
that's where we're at.
And for this bond won't be on there, so for a lot of people, it won't be
As much of a
as
difference.
much of a.
Yeah. Because there's the one that you're talking about, the middle school that's
Right,
dropping
that's
off,
okay.
right?
Yes,
It's all
correct.
50.
So it won't be like on top of, it'll be
Right.
just slightly a little bit,
Right.
yeah, replacing.
So if I redid this one, without Watonka, it would essentially be 90 million. And you would, then honestly, you could do, one way to do it is just roll it all together.
Yeah.
Because you're adding 3 million back, you're taking away 10 and putting back 3.
You could do it all in one fell swoop.
Right.
In a shorter amount of time.
Right. So, just, this is all, it is replace this, compare these, and add the capacity.
But you wouldn't repair Colonel Wright if it was the next one,
Right.
right?
Right. But
Yeah, that's where you drill down into the details, yeah.
so here's an idea, again, this is execution. You could take Colonel Wright, and now you have a use for the high school, you actually can convert a portion of it to the elementary school. Make Colonel Wright the community center. Its proximity is the value. It's pretty close to Colonel Wright. Not real close, but you couldn't, anyway.
Central.
They're
Relatively close.
relatively close. The execution is what you can develop over the next, several years.
Several years, right.
But it's a plan.
Yeah, but I think as far as getting this piece for
State.
we want something that we can take and use for the next phase,
Right.
but I think for the state piece, we can get this tied down pretty much with that draft plan too,
Okay.
with that adjustment.
Right. Watonka not being repaired, but
Correct.
moving the added capacity up.
Yeah,
And then it's a 2 to 5 year plan that then you can figure out which is the best strategy for an elementary school
right,
and elementary school.
and elementary,
If it's Colonel Wright, or if it's Chenoweth.
right,
Dry Hollow is probably not on the table, but
not
Could
right
be.
away, yeah.
so is that a plan?
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a plan the community would like to, going back to politics. They're going to look at the difference. Our original ask was 240 million. Here we're going to be asking 90 million. You say, oh, that's, they really scaled back down.
Yeah,
So it gets back to the execution.
Right.
If you set it up such that you're gonna have a single levy that requires voter approval at stages, you can do that. If you're gonna do this one big bond, you can do that. That's not what we have to decide.
right, we just have to get this piece done.
We're just trying to make sure it penciled out fiscally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except
spent.
My question's about the cost. I mean, I don't believe we can build 160,000 feet for $72 million. And I think we need 180,000 feet.
So I can run let's do this. I'll run the numbers.
Because
I'll run the numbers on how.
180 feet at $500 is $90 million just for the high school.
So,
Even that's good.
okay, let me run the numbers on how big it is. You went to 180?
Well, I think it's about it's around 160 right now, but if we're going to incorporate,
Right.
you know, the high needs, and
Wataka.
just like these
Will it have a
buildings don't have
cafeteria that
room
they
for
can
the extra
actually-
services, we don't know what we don't know.
I agree with you, the square footage needs to be higher.
Let me
Place
get
to eat.
let
Maybe
me,
might even not be enough.
Well, roughly, initially, back a year ago, we were talking about 200,000 square feet at $500. So it's $100 million for a high school.
okay.
With the bidding, if it was that, with the bidding that was done today, that would be 74 million, just,
But that's construction cost only.
yeah.
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 And that was for
These
development.
And
are
that was
development
just
costs.
the high school.
And
That
the
was
other
not
one
high school.
too, Richard, is, as we structure this, if you're gonna do one thing now and then 5 years and jump in 10 and then on the 15th year, the time value of money when you get out here, those construction costs, an elementary is gonna be 40-some million dollars.
Right, that's why, again, that's why I think the high school on the front end
Oh, that's right, because he said
You don't need-
370.
you
is
don't
going to move forward for a lot of resources,
Yeah.
just a way to start.
So we're going to take phase 2, or excuse me, scheme 2, draft plan 2, and just make it all one thing. Yeah, thank you, Rob. You've been patient.
Careful. If we, if our newer kids come out of Dalles High School, and we build a new high school, then we're going to be left with this empty high school. Would we put what the plan, at least some of what that plan is, into this state plan, or if we were going to use it for something?
State doesn't ask that.
Yeah, that's not what this piece is for. We were talking it through because whatever we do here needs to be able to not be totally contrary to what we want to start working on in the next phase. So
Yeah.
Well,
that was
and
the
honest,
reason for that.
realistically, for 15 years, you may need to put elementary kids in there while you're rebuilding.
Right.
And that's my point, is that
Yeah.
it's actually a really good place to house
You're not
elementary
going-
school
yeah,
kids,
so-
if it works.
Politically, you don't want any demo
Providing
conversations
it's not-
around a high school.
And it's going to save you money in the long
No,
run,
no.
because you've got swing space, and if you can move kids out,
Yes.
that means that you can build while school's in session.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
So I really want to implore everybody to understand, that's an execution plan.
yeah, this is not, yeah.
This is not, this is the big idea, and you're all doing a great job with it. I just want to reiterate, you have lots of options to take it to the next level.
My question was making sure that we just weren't losing that opportunity.
So Richard, I think our plan is, we need 4 phases instead of 2.
Okay.
And we got, round numbers, $100 million at the first, and then every 5 years, we need 30 and then 35 or whatever. They got to escalate. And you would, and that would be also, Richard, to when you were talking about the numbers you had for added capacity, as we rebuild those elementaries, they would be at the gross square footage of all of that.
Yes.
You know, including the modular.
And that's
plus.
what I had on Chenoweth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because they're about almost 60,000 square feet each.
the only one you're going to
Except for
have to look at differently is Colonel Wright, because if you were to replace or rebuild it in such a way, you would definitely want to up the capacity for Colonel Wright, because that's our smallest.
Correct. I would.
Size.
But I think
Have
you
it
also,
be at
you gotta be
least an average
sensitive to the
size.
historic thing too.
So it sounds like we're going to, I jotted this down. The intent is to replace all the schools over time, starting with the high school.
Yes.
And Is there a preference on which one's next? Do you want me to create a plan that lists?
Well, and I think that's where, now we're back to using the FCI.
Right.
And do, I
Okay.
think Colonel
Yeah.
Wright would be next.
Yeah.
Right. And I would, this is where I was going, is educational adequacy really, I mean, if you really want to get your bang for buck, address those schools that have the lowest of both.
Yes.
So we'll give you that analysis. What's the FCI? What's the educational adequacy score? And we'll put those side by side and we'll create a list with those. And that's the basis of your decision process.
Well, and again, my memory of it, you could check it out on there, is just the order that I gave you. Was
Yeah.
it was kind of the high school and Colonel
They were
Wright
5 years old,
were
right?
very close.
Yes.
And then right behind that was Chenoweth.
Yep.
And then was Dry Hollow,
Yeah. Right.
and then on both of those factors.
So we got a
That's what we
15-year
found.
plan instead of a 10.
And at some point, you probably reinsert upgrades for this.
Yes.
Well, that's what we did initially, last go round, because then this one's going to be 45 years old.
So that is what we found, is when we took the educational adequacy and the FCI, they seem to match up.
They seem to match, right.
Yeah, which again is not a surprise. So I've got, and I used 30 because that's what we came up with for Chenoweth.
Well, that was 22, but
With the added
5 years
capacity.
from now, it's going to be.
Okay, yeah, you're right, you have to balance it. Okay, so we will
Especially if I
interpolate,
want to add some square footage.
Right.
we
Yeah.
will interpolate those numbers.
Do they have to have costs, or do they just want order? Does the state want costs, or do they just want in which order you're going to
They,
do something?
they just want to know a plan.
They got one.
Yeah, we'll support it with some numbers. The only one, that 4 million that they'll give you is only going to
Be the
impact
first,
your.
at the first one.
But the goal of the legislature is to more substantially fund school capital improvement. So the plan you just outlined actually would support that motion.
Well, right, and we could go back after, if we're going to the voters
If
each
you
time,
have
we can go back
discrete
after another,
elections, you could
yes,
apply for the
Right.
4
the
million.
4
every
million
time.
each time.
Speaking to the
You're not
risk
gonna
of
get
this,
it, but you could
Well,
apply
but
for
you
it.
can apply for it.
It might be
You'll
more
get
by
it
that
sometimes.
time. It might be more by that time.
Yes.
speaking to discrete elections, I know it's a risk, but I also want to speak of optimistic note. When our community sees what a new school is and looks like, our community's going to want another one and
Yeah.
another one.
Anecdotally, I want to give you two things. One, Gresham Barlow has done such a great job with their current plan that they're already planning the next farm for that very reason.
Yeah, once you get it in place,
Once you get it in
if you've
place.
done a good job, yeah.
Yeah. And the second one is Mount Angel. There we go. No, I can spit it out. Mount Angel spent about $15 million and repaired all of their schools. And they missed out on any state funding because they did it before this funding was made. So, get your $4 million now.
Yeah.
And hopefully the state will begin to fund the schools more substantially. That is their goal. The Washington model is they will fund up to 50% of the schools. So if you're talking on these, and it's a similar model, now you're getting 15 for the state.
Well, but I would not want to hold my breath for that, given the Student Success Act that just got
Oh,
passed
okay.
in the state of Oregon. It's
Okay.
going to be a while before the state of Oregon looks at, really significantly increasing that piece, because
Okay.
there were an awful lot of people, including community colleges and
That
well,
were-
higher ed, that took a backseat to K-12 this time.
Okay. You know that back.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
think so, and
I'm gonna
but
go to
it's
the
it's
principal's
entirely
office.
possible. If you had 4 elections, it's entirely possible you could get a match on 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for years, the community colleges have only gotten a couple.
Yeah,
grants,
it's pretty rough. So they're going to be on the legislature's doorstep the next several times. And so, yeah, I don't think we're going to be back provided the apple
See if we
for
put
a while.
30 million.
So, let's meet on the 18th, 14th,
14th.
14th of January.
and we will show you a model and we'll tweak it.
Yes, let's
Good.
And what's the duration of this?
15
Well,
years.
it's
15
If you start-
15 years instead of 10.
If you start
Okay.
now, if you count now as 0.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you could submit a 15-year plan, they're not going to complain.
Well, lump two of them together at the
Yeah,
end.
yeah.
It's still also a 10-year plan. It just happens to be a 15-year plan too.
Exactly. So we're gonna, and the duration, this is a 15-year plan, so it's every 5 years?
Every 5 years.
Okay, I got it, I got it.
And
So,
if you put 30 million at the end to fix the middle school, you got $235 million. Kind of like last time.
It's very close.
But the difference is there's going to be a lot of pieces that are put into it that are more specific this time. going forward.
Right.
So, and the discrete elections,
Which is what the community was.
what they
asking.
wanted.
The other thing, though, I think, is that the community will have more of a buy-in for continuing that development because their kids and the community will experience the difference of what a new school offers the community and the way it looks and the economic activity it brings into the town because of the way it looks. And all that starts to fall into place.
Right.
You get a momentum for change building.
There will be an opportunity. I mean, you're not going to sell exactly $100 million worth of bonds, and you're not going to spend exactly $100 million building a high school. But you could take some of those bond proceeds and fix the elementary that you plan to replace last.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the thing that has to be talked about.
yes.
We're good.
So, are there any clarifications? I want to give you the opportunity to just kind of go through these checkpoints before we take off. We got enough time, a little bit of time that you can, are there any clarifications anybody has on their mind that we need to address as a group?
Can you make this look like a plan?
Yeah.
I thought I did pretty good taking 5 and making 3. This is not a big hill to climb. You've
Take
given
that
me
one
great-
piece of paper and make it look
You've
like a plan.
given me a great direction. I never, my greatest aspiration was that we would come out with some sort of plan. You didn't take any of these, we modified it. That was really the goal. It was a starting point. All right. Other information or anything else we need, I'm gonna have this falls into that category. I'm gonna create a plan and we're gonna mark it up with the FCI and the educational adequacy, matching them up. That creates the priority. Can I spell rebuttal, right? Is that wrong?
That's good.
Okay, thank you. It doesn't look right. It's like submittal. Yeah.
No, that's right.
Okay. Would it be okay if I just got a final thought from everybody? If you just kind of tell me what you think, what we need, just a comment would be greatly appreciated. Phil, would you kick us off there, sir?
Great. Come back to the thought Candy mentioned that I see a need for 3 groups. One is this group that makes the plan. A third group is a campaign committee, and an intermediate group that fleshes out some of the pieces. A good example of that is what to do with old buildings. That's a hard decision for a school board to make. It's better for people with real estate and that kind of interest.
So would you repeat those 3 groups?
So the school board makes a plan.
Okay.
Then there's a citizen advisory, call it, that does some broader scope. All that broadens the scope of the plan.
Okay.
And then campaign committee
Okay.
communicates the plan.
Communication, basically.
Okay.
It's not a communication, that's for communication purposes.
Well, the campaign committee is campaign.
Okay.
And that's a legal issue too, because it does need to be separate.
Okay.
I see what you're saying.
Who's willing?
I've said enough already.
Yeah, so funny.
So,
Anybody
Me
else?
too.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. There you go. Phil, you're the winner.
Last word, me? I got the last word? Oh, my God.
All right.
Everybody's planning up.
Richard, I guess I got something.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know what this speaks to. I guess it just strikes me as interesting that there's a dozen of us in here making this decision for a town of 10,000 people. And I don't know the answer to that one. I like to mostly ask rhetorical questions, I guess. But I mean, how do we get more interest in this? And I guess maybe that comes down the road when people are actually, it's time to fill in a bubble and fill in a box, but there's a lot more people than us
Yeah.
with skin in this game in this town, and I don't know if it's just asking more people to come, inviting more people, but there's.
It would be fascinating to hear the real estate end of things, as far as a realtor coming and drooling over properties.
I mean, we've got three elementary schools with 350 kids apiece. I don't know what the population at the middle and the high school are, but so many parents, I wish, were more involved in this process. Just trying to create something that's going to last, obviously, past the time that their kids are in school too. So, just seems to be a very small group of people making a very large decision. I've never been a part of anything like this, so it feels heavy and daunting, and I wish there was more involvement, I guess.
So the school district has tried to broadcast it such that you don't have to attend to at least get the information. And so hopefully, beyond this group, that you're all advocates and speakers and share what actually happened here, and somebody can validate they've seen on streaming.
Let me maybe respond in a positive sense. In the last bond issue, if we did nothing, we got everyone's attention. And all those issues were raised and broadcast in the broadest of public forums. And the ideas that we heard loud and clear at the ballot box and elsewhere were very present in our discussion here. So in a very direct, honest way, the whole community's been listened to.
Cool.
So it was promoted as well. We started promoting it at the end of September, and it was consistently paid to be promoted as well, both in Facebook, social media, but also YouTube, but also the local news.
Awesome.
It's a big, daunting subject, and I think us talking about it more, just like you have done, is the right way to do it.
Thanks, man.
I might even challenge everyone in here to go find the link for this broadcast and share it within our groups and people that we know on our personal pages and within the community pages too. Say, this is probably the most important video you can watch, and to understand what's going on. Your feedback is still welcome, and just make it as open as possible. But this is a great tool, having a whole documentation of this discussion and recap of the work done to date. I think that is a good capstone and help educate people if they're willing to take the time and put the skin in the game.
The link will be available as soon as we finish.
And we will have the plan that you talked about tonight. We're not going to leave it there. We will have it all kind of outlined in detail. We'll hand out recap sheets, so we've got it spot on, and I think it's a plan that has grown a little bit organically, and so I think in that regard you've done a really good job.
Compliments to you, Richard. Your listening capacity is incredible. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And you have a way of twisting the saddest stuff into happy thoughts.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad I could be of service. That's
You have
truly what I
superior
mean.
facilitation skills.
No, thank you.
I think the other thing to know is that this plan doesn't set everything in stone. It actually provides flexibility in the future.
Yeah.
So that we have this documentation is a good foundation, which can be changed, altered, moved with the direction of the community. I mean, it's not, and it does, I think, it does reflect all the way back in history. It reflects what's published in the paper. It reflects the entire result of the bond election. It reflects all of those things. So it's not that those elements are missing. They're very much here.
And to paraphrase IFMA, you need to revisit every 2 to 5 years.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Cindy.